Why do we all have to wear these ridiculous ties?
When I first made my Half-Life port video, I used that as a way to talk about the interesting aspects that these ports have brought to the table. They always had to make some small changes to get it in line with the consoles that they were ported to. Out of all the console versions that Half-Life has had, I think the PlayStation 2 version stands as the most unique of the bunch. While Half-Life 2 and the Orange Box's ports are impressive for their own reasons, PS2 Half-Life is the only version that had features that were made especially for it. Half-Life on PlayStation 2 had a lot of changes that made it unique in its own way. If you weren't aware, Gearbox Software worked with Valve to produce content for the original PC Half-Life. As time went on, Gearbox would want to expand to consoles, and they would start work on developing Half-Life for Sega Dreamcast. Once everyone realized that Sega's console was a sinking ship, its then exclusive campaign Blue Shift was put onto the PC as an expansion pack, and the console content was moved to the PlayStation 2. I'm gonna assume that you're familiar with the original Half-Life, since I'll be referring to its modern Steam version throughout most of this video. I'm probably gonna be referring to the Dreamcast port as well, so if you want, you can check out my video on that in the description below. If for some reason you've never played Half-Life, I really recommend that you go check it out, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. You can get it for like $5 on Steam these days. With all that said and done, let's just jump into Half-Life on PlayStation 2.
The technical challenges in bringing a PC game to a console like the PlayStation 2 are daunting. And gamers on each platform have preferences that have to be overcome. When we heard that Half-Life, one of the most popular PC games of all time, was now available on the PlayStation 2, we rushed out to get the inside story.
When you start up Half-Life on PS2, you'll be greeted by a unique main menu, similar to the Dreamcast, but with a lot more polish and a new music track. It's a great little song that works well with the game's atmosphere and makes the menu feel a little bit more alive. On the main menu, you can play through the original game, some new multiplayer modes, and mess around with the options. I'm going to start small and make my way to the bigger changes as we go along, so let's hop into the main campaign and see what's changed in the base game.
Morning, Mr. Freeman. Looks like you're running late.
Fans of Half-Life 1 will probably be aware that there's loads of minor differences between the PC version and the PS2. Right off the bat, the PS2 version uses an updated HD model pack that was released with Blue Shift on PC. Some of these models are revised from the Dreamcast port, and they update all of the NPC and weapon models. There are some slight differences between the PC and PS2 HD models, but unless you're looking really closely, you won't notice a difference. Humans across the board look improved, but changing the SMG into an assault rifle feels like a strange choice. Also, you can't choose between the original and HD models like you can on PC.
I'm slowing you down, am I?
PS2 Half-Life has newly animated health and HEV chargers that activate when you walk closer to them. I think they're neat, but it always bugged me that the health station never empties its tank fully. The eye scanners throughout Black Mesa also got a brand new model with animations. Maybe Gearbox felt the originals conflicted with the new character models. On PS2, there's no autosave mechanic like on PC. The game does have a quick save menu that you can access in this weird little pre-menu, but if you forget to do this, you could often find yourself losing some progress. As I played through the game, I built up a habit of opening the quick save before any major encounters, but I imagine if you played Half-Life for the first time on PlayStation 2, you might have some frustrating moments where you forget to save. I also have no idea why the menu has to be layered like this. I assume it's got something to do with performance, but it's kind of just strange. Of course, playing on a controller means PS2 Half-Life has to give you some new features to help handle the game. For example, you can hold jump to automatically crouch jump, or you can press it in the air to automatically use a long jump. On PC, these commands are a little bit tricky, but on a controller, it would be a lot more cumbersome. Gearbox also added a handful of helpful things, such as a new marker for interacting with objects, and a designator to show if you're crouched or sprinting. But the biggest change of the controls has to be the new implementation of a lock-on system. If you're facing an enemy or NPC, you can press a button to snap onto them. The reticle also seems to never break off, so once you're on a target, you can pretty much follow them as long as you want. There's no modern aim assist here, so I think it's a decent solution, but it does change up how you play the game. I found myself relying on getting targets locked on before I actually engaged, since firing without it can be pretty tough. On the other hand though, it can lead to you missing a lot of shots because of the way it lines up. You're sort of caught here between having a very rigid lock-on system or having no aim at all. For the most part, Half-Life on PS2 has an exact port of the original game, with the same enemy locations and map design, but I did notice a few small differences. To start, the tram ride at the start of the game has you stuck into the front of the train. This wouldn't be so weird if you couldn't move in the cancelled Dreamcast version, but in that one you can move around just fine. Due to the change, they also swapped the G-Man and Scientist at the start, so you can get a good view of him. Next spot that was changed was the beginning of Office Complex. Once you step outside, you'll notice the whole starting area of the chapter has been shifted around slightly. The change in locations also means that the vents don't have a dead end anymore, so maybe it has something to do with that. The PS2 version adds this weird little bridge off to the side before the main chamber in Blast Pit. There are still a couple of healing items in both versions though. Probably the most commonly referred to change that I see is the addition of water to the end of Blast Pit. The water here stops you from getting randomly killed if you just happen to be on low health, but it also sort of removes the gag with the head crab under the table. It's a smart change though, and I think it's implemented pretty naturally. They also added a whole little dialogue with scientists before the hazard course tutorial. All of the new dialogue also contextualizes the new features, such as signaling the suit to enter a crouch jump, or explaining the lock-on as a targeting system. They really made the whole tutorial feel much more in theme with Black Mesa.
By holding the jump button, you'll signal the suit to go into a crouch automatically. It's tricky.
At the end of the course, they also remove your weapons so that you can't soft lock yourself at the end of the tutorial. When you put everything together, it feels like they really went above and beyond here to make the hazard course feel like it's just another part of Black Mesa and the main game.
We wanted to take advantage of the PS2 and its high-powered graphics chip, and we were able to put in a lot higher poly models, put in higher textures, really just made the game look a lot nicer. And we were able to add another big piece of content to it that wasn't on the PC as well.
PlayStation 2 Half-Life has a lot of changes from the original single-player campaign, but it also adds a whole new multiplayer, like I mentioned before. To take advantage of the PlayStation 2's bump in power from the Dreamcast, Gearbox developed a campaign with a full two-player co-op mode called Half-Life Decay.
Dr. Cross and Dr. Green, you are required in the anomalous material operation.
In Decay, you and a friend play as the HEV suit instructor Gina Cross and a new character named Colette Green in an original story. Gina and Colette are tasked with reversing part of the resonance cascade as they try to survive the Black Mesa incident. But like the majority of the Gearbox characters, they're never referred to in the sequels. Frankly, the story is pretty unimportant, so let's get right into the gameplay.
Dr. Green, access denied.
Half-Life Decay is broken down into 10 separated chapters that you can play as missions in either single player or cooperative. Single player works by having the select button change what character you're in control of. When you aren't controlling someone, they basically turn into a turret that auto-fires at anything nearby. Playing with one player is functional, but I could imagine walking through the same hallway twice over and over isn't the most fun thing to do. One cool thing to note is that in one-player mode, the uncontrolled character has voice lines.
We've got trouble. I can't go on any further. Target down!
But it seems Colette's voice actress had a bit more fun with it.
Consider your ass covered.
I messed around for a bit in single player, but playing Decay in co-op is really the main draw. Shout out again to my friend Matt for coming along for the ride. You can find his channel down below. The first mission of Decay starts just before Gordon starts the teleporter. The two of you split up for a short time to get the Zen Crystal up for him. It's sort of like a tutorial and starts in a similar way to the original game. Once we get a pistol, we realize that the only weapon with a view model is the crowbar. I understand the technical limitations since Decay does lag every once in a while, but not having a weapon model just feels strange and kind of hurts the excitement of finding a new weapon. Sometimes we would get something new and not even realize it. Combat in Decay can get really hectic, so it's a good thing that there isn't any friendly fire. Eventually, you end up in a level set in the hazard course, which I think is a pretty clever concept. As you go through Decay, you'll find some pretty rudimentary co-op puzzles. One person throws a switch and raises another to go up an elevator, stuff like that. Half-Life 1 never really had any mind-blowing puzzles, but I do think that Decay really feels good when you get to split up and solve problems together. The third level, Surface Call, was when we noticed that Decay can be a bit unforgiving at times. There's no saving, and if anybody dies at any point in the level, it sends you straight back to the beginning. They generally balance the length of the level so that you don't lose too much progress, but just like in the base game, a random mistake can cost you quite a bit of time. Most levels last about 10 minutes on a good run, but would probably take at least 3 tries each. The next mission, Resonance, was tough and took a while for us to get past. Alien grunts also appear here, which I found sort of interesting since you don't see any bull squids or HECU grunts at this point. It also had alien controllers appear, which are pretty late game enemies. The puzzle here was a bit confusing to us. We couldn't tell if the idea was to just keep cranking the switch or to stop and deal with the enemies first. There were 2 switches in the same room, so we also thought about doing them at the same time. That didn't work. Resonance took us quite a bit of time, so we took a break in versus mode. Multiplayer, or head-to-head as the game calls it, is pretty straightforward. There's only 2 players here, so you just run around in some small maps. The maps are sourced from the original PC games, but there are also a few original ones that are extra small to support 2 players. The lock-on features are disabled, but otherwise the game is the same as Decay, except that you can kill each other. The character selection is pretty simple as well, the 3 playable doctors and some major NPCs. No G-Man or skeletons running around. I think if the game managed to support online or 4-player modes, it could have been more fun, but as it is, it's sadly just a little thing to do when you get bored of Decay. You set a kill limit, a time limit, a map, go nuts. Before we get back to Decay, I just want to say thanks for watching this far, and if you're liking the video, don't forget to subscribe afterward. Thanks. Mission 5 probably has the most new setting in the game, where you have to travel through the Black Mesa dormitories. As we went through the missions, it felt more and more like a mod to me. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to seeing all the Half-Life 1 assets, but when they add things like these carpeted floors and a swimming pool, it just makes me think of Team Fortress 2 trade maps. I kept noticing that Half-Life Decay is super Vortigaunt heavy. It feels like anytime they need to spawn an enemy, it's a Vortigaunt.
Well met.
In the next level, Code Green, we actually got stuck at the end of the mission. We didn't see the message on the computer in the security room, and we walked all the way back and just ended up dying to the endless spawning grunts. I ended up having to look this one up since I was genuinely stumped about what I was supposed to do here. We even took down the cargo helicopter thinking that that was the problem.
Hey, what are you 2 doing here? Take cover.
The next 2 levels, Crossfire and Intensity, were pretty simple. Crossfire randomly gave us so many health and weapon pickups, so it was pretty easy to get through. This secret weapon stash in Crossfire was kind of useless because it was like the easiest mission in the game. The puzzle in Intensity was probably the best one in the game, but it's still just a really simple puzzle. It's fun to do, but we did get soft locked on accident. With that out of the way, we were on to the last mission, Rift. You have to defend this beacon from waves of Vortigaunts and alien grunts. The first half is pretty easy because you can just cheese it by sitting here and shooting the enemies as they spawn. You finally get some rocket launchers, which is cool, but they're meant for this game's boss, this Zen dropship. Sometimes the tracking in the rocket would just not work though, but it was manageable after a few tries. And so we had finished Half-Life Decay. We found that the difficulty was weirdly balanced, and by the second half, it actually got easier. Technically, I wasn't finished because you can unlock a special 10th mission called Zen Attacks. To get this mission, you have to play the game with A ranks in every mission, but I just used the cheat code. In Zen Attacks, you get to invade a human base as 2 Vortigaunts, with the goal to recover these Zen crystals. The level is pretty short, but it can get you a cheat code to access Alien Mode in the rest of the game. But before I get into Alien Mode, I want to talk about the cheat menu. Here, you can input codes that you found both in and out of the game. Watch the credits, for example, and you get the code for slow motion. God Mode, Infinite Ammo, Low Gravity, they're all just cheat codes from the PC game, and they don't really bring anything new to the table. There isn't really anything special here other than slow motion and Alien Mode. So after unlocking all these cheat codes, I decided to try Alien Mode in the main campaign. Of course, as an alien, you can't pick up any weapons and are instead left with a melee attack and the standard Vortigaunt charge beam. All damage that you do can partially heal you back, so if there aren't too many enemies, you can just charge them with the melee attacks and sustain yourself that way. Also, for some reason, zapping boxes and other breakables heals you too. I did have a funny little bug where a few times I would die but heal right as I died, so I would be half dead for a moment. Also, speaking of health, HEV chargers don't work and you can't get any armor. Health chargers actually hurt you instead. Your field of view is made a bit wider to feel more alien, but I actually prefer it that way. I think in an effort to prevent people calling you Gordon, most NPCs have gibberish dialogue. It seems to be pretty inconsistent about when and where this happens though. I didn't really have any trouble as I made my way through the game as an alien until I got to surface tension. Up until that point, I didn't really use the beam all that much, but it was necessary to attack something flying like the helicopters. At least it would be in theory, but I threw zap after zap at the thing and it never died. After a few tries, I just gave up and ran away.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
The snipers in the later section are loads of trouble to get past. You don't have access to any grenades or explosives, so I don't think you can actually harm them. Same thing with the helicopters, I just had to run as quickly as possible. I would die all over the place, but the increased running speed meant that I could get through Half-Life in no time. Before I knew it, I was at Lambda Core and the end of the game. There was a little bit of trouble hitting the alien controllers, but after that I was off to Zen. When you get to the Zen chapter though, Alien Mode ends. Instead, you get put with this cute little cutscene where you reunite with your Vortigaunt buddies. I think Alien Mode is a great bonus considering Half-Life on PC doesn't have any bonus content whatsoever. You could argue that mods give you infinite options for extra content, but in terms of official licensed Half-Life stuff, this Alien Mode is exclusive to PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 Half-Life actually technically does have mod support though, which leads me to my next segment, the Extras menu.
On the PC, Half-Life has more mods available than just about any game, and the mods will be coming to the PlayStation 2 as well. In fact, Underground viewers will be the first to get the latest Half-Life mod, Uplink, and it's only available on the PlayStation 2.
Back during the release of Half-Life on PlayStation 2, people at Gearbox were actually promoting mod support for the game. As far as I'm aware, this didn't come to fruition as they had maybe hoped, and it was pretty much scrapped. That is, except for a single demo disc released for PlayStation Magazine issue 57. I wanted to do this video earlier, but when I found out about this thing, I knew I wanted to have that physical copy in order to show off this really cool process. The era of the PlayStation 1 and 2 was the peak of demo discs, and the official US magazine would release these with every issue. They would come with developer videos, hints and tips, and of course, playable demos. Half-Life has a video on this disc, and they mentioned that it contains a special mission that you can play in the main game. So once you enter the cheat menu, you can put in a special code and access the extra menu. When you open the extras menu, the Half-Life disc will eject automatically, and you can put in your new disc, in this case, Demo Disc 57. After a bit of waiting, the original PC demo, Half-Life Uplink, will appear in fully playable form in the PS2 version of the game. I don't think you'll understand how cool this stuff is to me. To think that you could swap out the game for another disc and just play that whole thing front to back is awesome. Nowadays, you would just download it off the internet and that would be that, but they had to find ways to get around it back then. There might be some other games that do this sort of thing, but I really couldn't think of anything similar, so if you know anything, let me know, because that stuff is so great. After I got it up and running, I got to play Half-Life Uplink, and it's fine. Uplink was originally created as a standalone demo for the game, and it serves as its own chapter. It's a really good vertical slice of the game, and it shows off different elements of Half-Life, but that's all it is.
Well, I seem to be seriously wounded.
Uplink likes to send loads of army guys on you, and it can be kind of tough for a demo. And even though there are some things that are exclusive to Uplink, like the shipping area, it just serves as an extra bonus mission. Half-Life Uplink, I think, was a bit more exclusive and unobtainable for a time, but it recently was ported to the PC version for the 25th anniversary of Half-Life. If you're curious, I'd recommend checking it out there. Maybe don't bother buying a demo disc off of eBay. I really took my time on the first run and spent less than an hour with it, and then replayed it in less than 20 minutes. It is originally a demo after all. While I wouldn't say Half-Life Uplink itself is the most interesting thing, getting it up and running on PlayStation 2 is really fascinating, and as a fan of retro gaming and the Half-Life series, it's a bit of a treat. While trying to be as modular and customizable as the original PC game never really occurred with the PlayStation 2 port, fans later on would end up modding the PlayStation 2 version of Half-Life itself. There's an entirely playable version of Half-Life Blue Shift for PlayStation 2. The Dreamcast port was originally supposed to have this exclusive content in place of Decay on PS2, so it's pretty interesting to see it come full circle and return to a console. The port is done by a guy named Supadupaplex, and its last update came out a few years ago. This version of Blue Shift is fully playable on an original PlayStation 2, but I just had to emulate it here. I went through the entirety of Blue Shift on this PlayStation 2 mod, and it was really well done.
Back up to Dr. Rosenberg.
Once you get to the actual meat of the game, it feels just like it would have if it was officially released on PlayStation. And it even comes with some cool bonus content, like adding Dreamcast models back into the PlayStation version. The mod even adds back the unreleased Dreamcast intro. While Blue Shift isn't exactly my favorite piece of Half-Life content, it's really cool to see it playable on PS2. It seems that the people working on the PS2 version of Blue Shift also seem to be working on an Opposing Force update, but they haven't updated it in over a year. If you're interested, it's pretty easy to find online, and I would recommend it, so check it out.
We made it, Mr. Calhoun. We made it.
After finishing up the Uplink demo disc, I'd pretty much exhausted everything that made Half-Life on PlayStation 2 unique. Of course, Decay, Alien Mode, and Uplink are all available to PC players in some form as mods. But I think assuming PlayStation 2 Half-Life isn't really worth bothering with, because there's a mod for it, is sort of missing the forest for the trees. If it wasn't for this exclusive version of the game, we would never gotten that content at all. Things like Decay are cool additions, but the demo disc modding to me is such an incredible thing that I wish they got to take further. It might just be trivia at this point, but looking back, I think it's cool to see. I went into this video assuming that you agree with me that the original game on PlayStation 2 is inherently interesting, and that the PC mods that add that content back are good, but don't make the original port any less interesting. But that's it for me today. I hope that if you enjoyed this video, you'll decide to subscribe and leave a comment below about your experience with Half-Life on PlayStation 2. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like for it. It helps me in the algorithm and all that fun stuff, and helps other people find this channel. I do have some Half-Life fan art on my Redbubble account. It's in the link below if you're interested in that sort of thing. Thanks again for watching and making it this far, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.